Okay, so Sir Alex Ferguson has released a book yesterday, actually, and he's got some pretty explosive claims, hasn't he, Bill?
Yes, Ferguson's a second autobiography. His first was released in 1999. This one's pretty explosive from all the quotes you've seen in the newspapers and on TV and all the websites. Doesn't hold back on most issues. Talks about Roy Keane, Ruben Nistelrooy, David Beckham, Liverpool. It's a great copy for everyone, and I'm sure it'll be a popular book. Um, and some of his views were predictable, but some of them were pretty left field as well, like his thoughts on the Owen Argues and Mark Bosnich.
Yeah, I agree. I think the most amazing one for me was the Roy Keane one. I know there was Mark Bosnich in particular was quite a amusing one, but with Roy Keane, he had the chance to reply straight away on last night's Champions League coverage on ITV, and he had a little dig back at him, and it's quite weird to see it between two. I mean, very high-profile people in football. Obviously, Ferguson's retired now, but it's a very strange one. I think it's a bit bitter by Ferguson to start kind of telling all these stories and naming names like he did. It kind of tarnishes his reputation slightly, in my opinion. But it is what it is. A lot of people do these books, and it's no surprise really.
Yeah, I think the stories which she's come out with, I think they're the kind of things what should really stay within the club and stay within the dressing room. I kind of like question his purpose or his objective from what he gets out of releasing this kind of book. And obviously it's money, but then you ask the question, why would someone who has earned so much from his profession, very successful career, why would he need to make even more money by publishing this book? Because this is why we've got all these fascinating stories within the book, so that it can be a big sell. And I just wonder why he has done something like this, why instead he doesn't just relax and enjoy his time after his career with his family, instead of publishing this book, what releases a lot of deep stories regarding players who he's worked with before.
I think he needed to release this book because there were stories about certain players that he needed to talk about. I mean, Roy Keane left under a cloud. That was over pretty quickly. So was David Beckham. So was Ruben Nistelrooy. So he needed to sort of write those stories and tell the fans, more important Manchester United fans, what actually happened, why those players had to go. And most of the theme of the book is most about control.
Yeah.
And them three players in particular, and sort of Yap Stam as well, they undermined, or started to undermine Ferguson. As soon as they did that, they're out the door. And that's the main sort of thoughts about the book.
But I don't think United fans were particularly questioning his decision to let go of these particular players. I think they understood that Ferguson was doing it for the best for the club, and that these players had run their course or they'd become too big for Manchester United, and that's why he got rid of them. I think United fans understood their departures, and I think they respected Ferguson's decision. So I don't know. I still didn't think, especially he's released stories about players who are still playing a game. I think that's a big difference as well. Obviously, the mention of Wayne Rooney, I think it's just a bit bitter, and I think it's a bit unneeded.
Yeah, the Rooney one, I'm a bit puzzled why he's decided to mention, because Rooney's still playing for the team and still a key player. I mean, the others are sort of, it's fair enough because they don't play for the team anymore. But yeah, the Rooney one, he keeps on mentioning that he asked for a transfer request, but Ferguson sort of replied to that saying he was played out of position because he was out of form. He wasn't playing like he is this season, and he said no way would he drop him if he was playing like he is so far this season. You've got to say that's pretty true, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And regarding Beckham as well, there was a few things we kind of already knew, like he said about how Beckham wanted the celebrity life a bit more than the footballing life in a way, with his obviously marrying Victoria posh vice. But the way he talks about how he had to let players go, it was a thing we already knew about him. As soon as they thought they were bigger than Man United, he would just let them out the door. And it was a system which took a lot of guts to do, because there were some absolutely amazing players that have come through at Man United. But he stuck to his guns, and his whole tenure as a United coach is obviously going to go down in history as one of the best ever. So you've got to say, as controversial as some of the things he said and done, it has worked for him.
One thing this book does do is completely seemingly end his manager career. He's not going to come back. There's no chance Sniffet will come back after releasing a book as sensational as this.
Yeah, I think that everyone pretty much knew. I think he was going to, when he finished from United, he was going to be finished. But going back to the previous point, I think that, yeah, obviously his decisions to let the players go were bold decisions, and I think they obviously were proven right. And I think them decisions he made, I think, really proved what a great manager he was, that he could build a number of teams, letting big players go, but then producing new ones. That's what made him so special. So I think no one's disputing that. I just think that I don't think that the whole world and the press need to know the little details of what the players what they were doing wrong. I think that should be between him and the player who's concerning, and I think that's it.
In a way, though, he's kind of beating them to it to tell their side of the story, if you know what I mean. He's had years of, you said, controlling the club, and he's had to say things for the club and not for his benefit. So now it's his chance to go, right, this is what happened from my point of view, rather than waiting for Beckham to come out in a year's time and go, well, this is what happened, and he has to then turn around and go, no, it didn't happen, if you know what I mean.
Well, he's probably had this in the pipeline for a good couple of years. He probably knows that he was going to retire, so might as well write a book so it will come out pretty much a couple of months after he leaves, which is what happened. I mean, on Beckham, he sort of gives a mixed opinion about him. He says he's a wonderful boy, but he said you should never surrender what you're good at. Like in terms of his move to join LA Galaxy, and he said David was the only player I managed who chose to be famous, which is kind of true. He's very famous, but he does work hard, and he did. He was a good player for Man United, especially in that late 90s, early 2000s period.
What I think shouldn't be forgotten is that it's not just all negative. Obviously, the press are going to pick up on the negative comments he's made about particular players, but I obviously haven't read the book, but I'm sure there's lots of positive comments about players he's worked with, i.e. how he said about Beckham, he was like a son to him, i.e. like Ronaldo, that he was the most talented player he's ever worked with. So there is going to be, among that book, a lot of positivity around particular players. So I think that we shouldn't get too detailed with all the negative parts.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the best quotes regarding Ronaldo was he said he'd rather shoot him than sell him to Real Madrid. Obviously, in the end, he had to, but to get 80 million, I don't think he would have been. Well, I mean, losing he was the best player in the world at that time. I think when he scored, it was like over 40 goals in that season for Man United just before he left. That was when it was like awe-inspiring to watch Ronaldo at work, and Ferguson must have been really gutted to let him go. And especially as that 80 million never really got reinvested into the team. And if you look at the league table now, after Ferguson's gone, Moyes has got a tough job, and he could really use that money now.
Well, I mean, we're saying that David Beckham got a bit of criticism, but that's nothing to what Roy Keane got, his former captain. I mean, let me just read a quote from the book. The hardest part of Roy's body is his tongue. What I noticed about him that day, as I was arguing with him, was that his eyes started to narrow, almost to wee black beads. It was frightening to watch, and I'm from Glasgow. I mean, that's pretty relentless. He said he's a man of extremes. He lacks patience. That he failed at Sunderland, came up short at Ipswich Town. And the reason why he sort of let King go was the one thing I would not allow is a loss of control, because control was my only saviour, which we've touched on before. I mean, King left under a crowd because he gave rather extraordinary unbroadcast interview with the club's TV channel NUTV, which he slagged off a number of players, including sort of Edwin van der Sar, John O'Shea, Darren Fletcher, Kieran Richardson. And obviously they were not happy about it. They confronted him, and he didn't back down, as it were. Carlos Queiroz said it was the worst imaginable spectacle. The sort of argument what happened after that. The meeting in the room was horrendous. I just could not lose my control in that situation. If I'd let it pass, I think the players would have viewed me differently. Throughout my career, I've been strong enough to deal with issues like that. Roy absolutely overstepped the line. There was nothing else we could do. And that's what Ferguson said about Keane. And that's why me and I paid up this contract and eventually joined Celtic. But yeah, so it's pretty. We sort of knew that happened anyway, but we didn't realise how brutal the ending was. And obviously the relationship not going to really improve much. During ITV's coverage of Arsenal Dortmund last night, Keane was asked by Adrian Charles his thoughts on the book, and Keane just said Ferguson has no loyalty. So I think this story will continue for a while yet.
It's definitely a book that I'm looking forward to getting my hands on and reading.